Welcome to So You Think You're Awake. I'm Michael Sheridan, and my guest this week is Dr. Michael Larson. He's an expert in many fields. He's a naturopathic physician, a master acupuncturist, a massage practitioner, and a chiropractor. We could have a whole interview dedicated to any one of these, so it'll be hard to choose my questions. There's such an overlap with dreams when it comes to staying healthy. I love it. But something I rarely get to ask a doctor about is the flow and balance of male and female energy within us. Dreams are huge on this, and so too are Eastern traditions. Then, to top it all off, Dr. Larson has an astonishing twist in his life story that happened in his 20s. Where to begin? I may as well start the interview with, will you come back? Because I have so many questions. Dr. Larson, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here. Being an introvert, I have to ask why you volunteered to come on the show.
Well, Michael, the reason I volunteered is because I felt actually inspired to be on your show. It was like the inner self said, hey, go be on this guy's show for some reason. And so I'm here.
Your inner self needed to give you a smackdown in some way.
Oh, no, I think it's for you. I'm doing this for you.
I have to share this with people. People, when they're on, they always say, what type of questions are you going to ask? So I share with them a list of questions, and I did that with you, and you said, they're great, but let's not ask those questions. Let's wing it.
Yes. Okay, so here we are winging it. And one of the things I wanted to do was to give you two dreams.
Okay.
Now, to give you these dreams, I have to give you this introduction about me a little bit, if I can.
Perfect.
And that is that I was very much an athlete growing up. In high school, I had 9 varsity letters. So, I was always, people would say, there goes Michael, because I was always running. I had just tons of muscles, I guess you'd say, and was very active and this kind of thing. And then as I graduated from chiropractic college and was started practicing, and I've been in practice now maybe 6 months, 9 months, I suddenly became ill. And what happened was in 3 days I became paralyzed from the neck down, just like that. It was totally not real.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And I had a real good friend, good close friend, Dr. Thomas Smart, here in Seattle, and he says, well, Michael, I think you ought to come down and see me here at the hospital. So my wife said, well, let's get him in the car. But they couldn't get me in the car because I was almost 200 pounds, and she was just 5 foot. So we got the neighbor boys, 2 16-year-olds, and they dragged me in the car and strapped me in, and down we went. And this was the beginning of this paralysis as it continued to flow and become so devastating to me, because I was actually paralyzed from C5, the cervical vertebrae, all the way down.
So from the neck down, completely paralyzed.
Yes. So I was breathing with the auxiliary muscles you have in your neck. So I would breathe like this. I'd go, because the lungs weren't working. And every time I went to sleep, I would wake up and I lost more muscle. And finally, I was staying up. I was awake. I know I was awake at least 23 hours, and I kept wiggling my thumbs, which were the last thing that would work on me. And then I drifted off to sleep. And when I woke up, they were gone too.
So you lost control of them as well?
I did. And it continued to even get worse, so that when I wake up, I needed to catch my breath. So if people said something to me, I was just... And I wondered, like, maybe I was going to wake up dead.
Yeah.
It was that serious.
Yeah. Well, you have a sense of humor about it now. And I'm glad you're talking about this, because you told me before it's something you rarely talk about. And
It is. But it leads me into my dream.
Okay.
So at some point I stabilized. They didn't know what I had, and they didn't know what caused it, and they didn't know any cure for it. And being a chiropractor, I was not about to let them put medicine in me that they could use as kind of like me as a guinea pig, because I said I'm the only guinea pig I've got.
Yeah.
So I had no medication. And around the 6th day, now mind you, the way that I could call a nurse was there's a little fluffy thing that goes on your pillow, and you can push it with your head, okay, and that would signal the nurse. And that was all I had to indicate a nurse. In the middle of the night, I was screaming, and I pushed the little button, and the nurse came in, and I said, watch out for him. And she says, what's wrong, Mr. Larson? They didn't think of calling me Dr. Larson because I was only a chiropractor. Anyway, I said, it's the Indians. She What Indians? And she said, they're all over. They're hiding. Look, there's some over there. I know they're behind the door. They're out there in the hallway. They're shooting. And she says, there are no Indians. And I said, yes, I've been shot in the legs. Both legs, they're shot. I've got arrows in them. And she says, there are no arrows in your legs. You're paralyzed. Don't you remember? And I said, yes, I know I'm paralyzed, but there's Indians. They're all around, and they're shooting, and they're going to get you. So you better hide. And she said, now by this time, this is the conversation going on, and you'd think I would be awake. But I was still, I knew there were Indians. I was positive.
You're still in the dream.
I would have bet my bottom dollar on there being Indians. And she says, look, if I pull the covers off your feet and you see there are no Indians and no arrows, would you believe me? And I said, well, sure, I believe you, but I got to watch out for those Indians. You got to be careful. They're going to get you, and you don't have to do that. I know they're there. And she pulled the sheets off my legs, and there were no arrows. And that was part of what I would say is the first part of this dream.
Okay.
So,
do you want me to comment here?
Comment here.
Do you think it's a precursor to you becoming an acupuncturist or devoting so much of your life to becoming an acupuncturist?
No, but I can tell you about that one later. Yeah. What I feel it was this dream that I was awake in, but I was still in this dream, and it was a way to me of rationalizing that I was really paralyzed.
You're still coming to grips with it, but you said this is like 6 days in.
6 days in, yeah.
Do you ever come to grips with it? I mean, how long were you paralyzed for?
Well, that's always one of those questions because I'm still somewhat paralyzed. If we go to Disneyland, I'll use crutches, or even if we're going to spend the whole day, I might even get my wheelchair out, which I have 3.
Right.
So but I consider the first 4 years was my paralysis time. After that, I went to WSU and graduated from there.
Okay. So the attack on your body, so basically the Indians are attacking your body, and you see that as, and it would fit too, that this is you at nighttime trying to come to terms with the fact that your body's under attack. Or still, by that dream, it's still under attack. So whatever was taking you down was still actively taking you down at that stage.
Yes, and there had to be some sort of recognition in my mind to allow me to cope with that.
Yeah.
Because it was unbelievable. Somebody that was totally athletic. Oh, by the way, I was not in any accident. It just happened.
Yeah.
I was taking some Boy Scouts on a merit badge hike, and when I came back, I started getting weaker. And then the next day, I couldn't get out of bed. And I said, well, I'm Norwegian. Honey, I'm married at that time. Pull me out of bed and I'll get going. and she pulled me out of bed and bam, I fell on the floor like a rock and it hurt. And that was, I did this army crawl into the living room, and she says, well, let me call up my mom, who has a PhD in English literature in Wenatchee, and she says, well, is Michael, how's he look? And she says, well, he looks okay. He just can't move very well. She says, does he have a good appetite? And she said, honey, do you? I said, yeah, give me a whole bunch of food. I'm ready. I'm hungry. And she says, he'll be all right.
So English literature didn't fix you.
No, it didn't.
So you shared before that I don't know how long into this, but you decided, okay, nothing else is fixing you, so you're going to have to fix yourself. And you set yourself the task of moving your right arm or something like that.
Oh, Michael, this gets hard. This was so devastating. I was married. I had my first daughter. Well, she was a week old, and I became paralyzed. Boom. And then a week later, I was drafted into the service. So people say, well, maybe that was the reason, because that was 1967, and I'm not about to kill a human being in any way. So I probably would have got killed over there if I hadn't been paralyzed. But If I could have killed myself, if I could have committed suicide, I would have at that time.
Yeah.
So, but I couldn't. The only thing I could think of was to starve myself. And so I told, I wasn't hungry, don't feed me. And of course I had to be fed. So they knew I wasn't eating. And after about 4 or 5 days of not eating, my wife brought in this pumpkin pie and ice cream. And then I realized there's no way that I could kill myself. Because I couldn't use my arms, I couldn't use my legs, I couldn't move. So there I was.
Yeah.
So then I said, well, by the way, I'll start back a second. The medical people said, well, it doesn't look like you're going to get well. It looks like, because I said to them, when will I run again? And there were 8 of them. There were specialists at the University of Washington. They all left, which really hurt too.
Oh, imagine.
And so I said, well, I'm not going to get well, so I might as well try to get well because I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah.
So I was totally on my back, and I had all this time. The only thing I could do would be to watch TV, and after a while, as the world turned, just gets so bad. So I would lay with my hands over, and I'd try to get my right arm to move, and I would say that thousands of times, move, muscle, move. And as a chiropractor, I knew where the synapses were in the brain and so on. I'm thinking, move, muscle, move. And it was the most obvious muscle right there because I could see it.
Yeah.
So I kept trying it, and I did that for months. And then finally, I got a little twitch. And when I got that twitch, being a good Norwegian, I knew I could get totally well. So that's how it started.
That was going to be one of my questions. So that first movement, that first success was enough for you to know, okay, I can keep going this road.
Oh, yeah. I'm very optimistic. And then finally, I got my arm to go over, and because of the atrophy, it just fell on the table.
Oh, yeah,
on the
you
bed.
no muscles or anything.
Yeah. And I called my wife over, and I said, look, I moved my arm. And she says, oh? And she puts it back up on my chest, and she says, show me. And I couldn't show her. So I had that. So then I kept doing it for another long time. And finally, I just say, well, just put it back on there. And she put it. Finally, I knew I could move it in her presence.
Yeah.
And I told her, okay, now I can move my arm.
I'm a performing monkey now.
Yeah. And so then I thought about, now how am I going to get well? And I thought, well, I'm going to need to sit up. For all this time, I hadn't sat up because you're just laying down because you don't have any muscles. So I had her sit me up. And it was like I was like on the planet Jupiter or something because it was so heavy and it hurt. It was painful. And I could be up only for about 5 seconds. It's, put me down, put me down, put me down. And so that was one of the first things, was that. And then later on, there's this hoist, and it'll hoist you around. Yeah, and I'm on radio, so those of you who are paralyzed, you know this hoist I'm talking about. Well, they use it to move cars, but they use it to move people too. And they put me in a living room, and I wanted to be on the carpet, and I practiced crawling, and it was I made it my job. I said, okay, I'm getting paid by Social Security to get well. So from 9 to 5 with an hour off for lunch, I'm here to get well. So I would work at crawling, and the first week I could make it maybe a half an inch in a day. And I was exhausted, and they'd bring me some food, and I'd eat the food and go to sleep, and then my hour's up, they'd wake me up, and away I'd go. So I kept on doing this. Finally, they got a creepy crawler for me, so I started crawling like a turtle, and kept going from there, and kept on going.
When you told me the story before, it reminded me of the Bruce Lee story. I don't know if you ever saw that, where he was paralyzed too, and medical doctor said he wasn't going to walk again, and just sheer determination and his knowledge of how energy flows through the body is what he used and focused on to overcome his limitation. It just because also of your interest in Eastern medicine, it makes me think of the two of you in the same way. But I just couldn't imagine it, and the whole idea of being paralyzed for so long puts you into a category beyond expert when it comes to understanding limitations and what people are going through when they come to you with a physical ailment.
Oh, yes. I can remember being in the hospital at the University of Washington on the 4th floor and with these other quadriplegics, and we'd see somebody come in with a stroke, and we'd say, oh, I wish I had a stroke instead of this because I could use the other hand, see, to get better. Yeah, but I didn't even have a hand or a foot so that I could move.
Wow.
So,
So you had company in the hospital,
oh
light
yeah,
company.
lots of quadriplegics.
Mhm.
And you know, there's a interesting thing there because most quadriplegics are happy people. And I was happy.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that you can be in a position where you've lost so much and still be happy.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to.
Okay.
Thanks very much for sharing that, and I know I could tell it was emotional, and you were holding it together there.
Yeah.
But so you were a chiropractor, and then you got your health back over your ability to move back over many years. Did you straight away decide, okay, I want to learn more about acupuncture, or what made you decide to add other disciplines to your practice?
Being a chiropractor takes a lot of physical work.
Okay.
And I was in a wheelchair. I was in long leg braces with crutches and so on. I didn't have a lot of strength. And I thought, well, let's see what I could do becoming a naturopathic physician. So I went to the John Bastyr school. At that time, it was on 45th and University there. So it was just starting off in 82.
They still have a place down there.
That's on the other side. That's down in Wallingford now. They have a clinic, yeah. But so I decided to become a naturopath. And in the process of being a naturopath and getting stronger, actually my upper body from, say, my waist up was usable.
Yeah.
Not strong, but usable. But from the waist down, I didn't have much. And while I was at the naturopathic school, they had introduced as an experimental thing acupuncture. And they had acupuncturists there. And I went to the clinic. You're a student, you're supposed to go to the clinic. And I went to the clinic, and they used acupuncture needles on me on the bottom of my foot. And they would burn these needles. This is called moxa.
Yeah,
and I felt like a candle, they're burning me here. And the acupuncture took the paralysis from the waist down to 2 inches above the knee in 3 months.
Wow.
I said, whoa. This is so powerful. I have to be an acupuncturist. So right then and there, not having finished my naturopathic work, I knew I was going to be an acupuncturist.
And so you describe yourself first and foremost as a naturopathic physician. What is a naturopathic physician compared to a medical doctor? I mean, you can write prescriptions. You treat all sorts of ailments, like if you've got tonsillitis and so on. So what is the difference? I mean, you're looking at me like I have two heads. But for people who don't know, what is the difference?
The difference is that the medical doctor will do major surgery. I can do minor surgery. The difference, I've worked in 3 hospitals, so and I've delivered babies, and I've prescribed drugs. I can't prescribe anesthesia, what Michael Jackson died of, these kind of things.
Yeah.
I can't prescribe heavy drugs, but I can prescribe a lot of drugs if I want. This is relatively a new thing. I think it's from the 1990s that this happened. But I can do most of the things the medical doctor can do. However, I go the other direction. I can go into herbs. I can go into tinctures. I can go into vitamins. I can go into minerals. I will be more interested in exercise and more interested in personally getting into the causes of the problem rather than the person comes in and gives them a drug and a prescription and away they go.
So my daughter went to you with tonsillitis, which is why I mentioned it. Full-blown white spots on the tonsils and everything. And you used a different treatment than penicillin. And you said this is something, once the body recovers, there's no side effects. Whereas penicillin wages war on all sorts of good bacteria in the body as well as the bad ones. So it's a much preferred, at least from my perspective, a much preferred solution.
We now know that penicillin injures brain cells even. So it's not a good thing unless you really need it.
Yeah.
You just have to have it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was nice to use herbs on her. She was a cooperative patient. That was good.
Yes, more so than I thought she was. And none of it was horrible stuff to eat. I remember one piece. There was garlic involved, I remember.
Yes, garlic was involved. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and And then you added massage. You say on your website, which is drmichaellarson.com if anybody wants to look it up, but you say on your website that you go after the triad of health, which is biochemical, physical, and what else? Emotional,
mental, yeah.
So, and you're you don't just. I think it's typical of Eastern philosophies. You don't just have one visit. You're not in and out like a shot, and so you get to know your patients. Like if I was to come to you, and if something was different with me, you'd spot it in my demeanor, or you'd spot it in some way. But one of the things you do very early on in the treatment is you take a Chinese pulse. Could you describe what that is and what can it tell you compared to, say, a medical doctor's pulse where they're just checking to see if you're not dead?
Well, let me go for a little background there. As a chiropractor, I have a Western background in this in study of health and disease. Okay. And as a naturopath, I have an even more profound study of medicine with the background. Okay. When I went to the acupuncture college, they said, take all your medical knowledge and just store it over there in the cabinet and just listen to us and see what we have to say and what we think and how we relate to the body. And when you're done with that, take out your medical stuff and use it as you want. And I would tell you that the medical part of me is not nearly as powerful as the Chinese part. The Chinese are interested in the whole person. When you come in, I look at your eyes. I look at the sparkle in your eyes. I listen to how your voice sounds. I'm interested in the smell. I'm interested in the motions that you make. I'm interested in everything about you. Even the colors you're wearing are significant to the acupuncturist. And then, as you say, I take the pulses, and there are 9 pulses on each hand. And I'm not listening for how many beats per second, but there are actually about 26 different pulses. And I'm interested in if it's slow and easy, if it's rapid, if it's harsh, if it's fluttering, if it's one thing or another, soft. All these pulses tell me about you, tell me what's going on. And then I'll examine your tongue, of course, and also your abdomen, which is called the hara.
I'm kind of smiling here because I'm going to hang Sandy here. My partner, Sandy, if we're out, she'll say, I'm not going to eat chocolate today because I'm going to Dr. Larson tomorrow and he'll know.
Yes. So I can tell a lot of things that you wouldn't normally think from a Western standpoint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you ever have a battle between the two? Your knowledge of Western, where Western medicine would come at treating something from compared to an acupuncturist, or is there always an easy one to pick from?
Most of the time, the looking at the patient from the Chinese aspect is the correct view. 1 in 20, maybe, do I find that it's really a brachial nerve rather than the meridians of the body or something. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah, and you don't knock Western medicine. You never do, but you're always very enthusiastic about the granularity, you say, in which the Chinese diagnosis can give you. Like it's like a much narrower, or is the word narrower? Or is it a broader view of what's going on inside the person that tells you, where the problems are and what you need to work on?
Yes, with the Chinese concept, you can be much more complete. And we were talking about this. The Chinese have been doing this for at least 6,000 years, and Western medicine's been doing this, including chiropractors and naturopaths, for 100 years. So which one should be the one that has the most intelligence going for them?
Well, but see, that's news to... it's news to me, so it's news to most people who are listening to this show as well. But with your education, you have an understanding that we don't have. So, but that's just the way the Western world is, new in a lot of things. And even it's funny, like if you take the Native Americans, their ancestry and the things that they do are more in line with Eastern philosophy than
Absolutely.
They would be with Europeans
Yes.
and so
Mm-hmm.
on. So we're the odd ones out, but yet we dominate for now till China takes over the economy of the world, or they already have. So I wanted to do a dream of yours. You said you had two. In fact, you said You shared a dream just before coming on the air.
Let's go ahead and use that one.
Okay. Real short. You said
this morning, as I was sleeping, and I was going to remember my dream, but I didn't. But the little part I remember is that there was this medical doctor in front of me, and he had his stethoscope around his neck. He was a very big guy, and he was keeping me from going where I wanted to go. And he was right there, and I couldn't get around him. And as you realize, I'm not totally free from my paralysis, so I can't fall over easy. So there was no way I could get around this guy.
Okay. And I would take it, given what we're talking about, and given your knowledge of both Western medical doctors and Eastern treatments, I would say that that dream is saying that you limit yourself or can limit yourself because of your Western training, if you know what I mean. It's a natural thing. In whatever society we're born into, that's the one we favor. And even when, like, you're so open-minded when it comes to acupuncture and everything like that compared to most. But yet even then, you would probably find that you still hold back because your upbringing was in the West. And so I would say that dream is saying, if you have an inkling whatsoever to see how much more you can go in like an intuitive direction or a direction that is different from Western medicine, that dream is encouraging you there because it's blocking you.
Okay. Thank you.
But you never disagree. I know you do. That's true. You do. I have a million questions here that you wouldn't let me ask, but there is one dream that I did want to do, and we only have a very short amount of time, but I find it interesting. You did my course. In fact, many doctors have done my course, which I also find interesting. But you say in this, I was interested in going to somewhere like Calgary, Alberta, Canada, for a seminar. So it starts out, I wanted to go to Canada tomorrow, and I was thinking of taking the old 8-foot trailer that you hitch on behind a car. Well, there was some problem, and I found myself in front of the old O'Reilly's or some type of automotive place. The trailer was there, and it needed to be fixed appropriately for the trip. Then Jerry Lynn, who's your wife, seemed to be in charge of this, and she was getting it all ready. There was some serious problems and so on, and I'm going to cut it short because we're running out. And she submitted a dream at the same time because she was doing the same course that was also about putting a hitch on a motorbike. And I thought, that's really bizarre. Who dreams of hitches? And it turns out to be about the two of you getting married. And of course, you were being very quiet in the class. I assumed you guys were already married, but you weren't. But you were planning it. And you got married very shortly after that.
Yes. Your dream caused us to realize that we really wanted to be married.
And the going to Canada, I said, the going to Canada in that said that this was going to be a really good thing for you to do, that it would bring you into a much better field than you expected it to take you. And the old hitch referred to other marriages and so on. So has that been true now?
Totally. It was amazing. It was amazing.
We're out of time here. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut you off. But drmichaellarson.com is the website if you want to look up more about this amazing person and want to get some serious treatments.